Hello, my name is Todd Larsen, and thank you for joining Green America's presentation on climate action to improve your and the planet's health at the NBC Health and Fitness Expo. So a little bit about Green America. We call ourselves a green economy organization. Our mission is to work with consumers, businesses, and investors together to create an economy that works both for the environment and for social justice. One of the biggest questions we get from our members and the public is, what can I do about climate change? And that's because people are seeing that the climate crisis is accelerating around the world. We're seeing those higher temperatures leading to wildfires like the ones in California, huge flooding in the Midwest, destroying farms, the weather we just saw in Texas where freezing temperatures came in. This is all due to climate destabilization. So we're seeing the impacts of climate change right now. It's not decades off. And we definitely have to take action right away. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a body that has looked at climate change for decades, is telling us that we need to act in the next 10 years. We need to reduce carbon pollution by 45%. And this is something we haven't been doing yet. Up until the pandemic, carbon emissions were growing. They've temporarily slowed, but once we get the pandemic under control, they're going to rise again unless we take action to reduce our major carbon emissions. And if we don't, we could be on track to hit a warming of 4 degrees Celsius, which would be catastrophic. And climate change is also an equity issue. The vast amount of emissions that have been produced around the world come from the wealthiest people and the wealthiest countries in the world. And so folks who are in the top 10% of wealth in the world, which includes people who are middle class or above in the United States, we need to be looking at how we can cut our emissions by 90% or more, so that people who are trying to establish a standard of living that is fair, the poorest people in the world getting to a living income, they can actually grow their incomes and grow their emissions a bit so they can achieve a good life. And it's also true that the folks who are poorest, both in the United States and around the world, are the ones who are going to get hit the hardest by climate change. So we owe it to them to cut our emissions as much as we can. So when people hear about climate change, they have a number of reactions to it. One of which is denial. Sometimes people fall into despair. People start to wonder, is there anything that we can do to address such a major challenge? If we do take action, is it going to be enough? But the science tells us that we actually can take sufficient action to bring climate change under control. We have all the technology we need. We have the know-how. What we need is our politicians, our corporations, and all of us as citizens of the world to take action. And the good news is Americans on the whole realize the urgency of the climate crisis and want to take action. So where would we take action? Well, one of the biggest drivers of climate change is actually electricity production. For years, this came from coal-fired power plants, but local activists, environmentalists across the country fought those coal-fired power plants. Unfortunately, as those shut down, we moved to natural gas, which turns out to be nearly as polluting as coal. So fossil fuels are definitely not the solution. What we need to do is move to renewable energy with battery backup storage as fast as possible. The good news there is it's actually very affordable. It is rapidly scaling up. We just need to go a lot faster. Another major area of emissions is transportation. So what's happened over the last 20 years is cars have gotten more efficient, but as they got more efficient, people bought larger cars. So now SUVs are the #1 cars selling in the United States. Unfortunately, electric vehicles, although people are buying more of them, are still less than 1% of the vehicles sold in the United States. We really need to change that. We need to get people walking and biking more in their neighborhoods, and we need to reduce our air travel and find ways to make air travel more efficient. So what can we do as individuals in our own life? Well, what you can do is look at where our biggest carbon emissions generally are as individuals. And mostly they come from transportation, from our cars. So as individuals, we can look to go car free. If that can't happen, we can go electric with our vehicles. We can drive them a lot less. Another thing we can do is try to avoid transatlantic flights when possible. They create a huge amount of carbon emissions. After transportation, the next biggest area we can look at is buying green energy. So you can either put solar on your roof if that's a possibility, take part in community solar project if that's a possibility, or you can buy green energy directly from a provider on your electric bill, which is often a possibility, and in most states you can do it. After buying energy and how we power our homes, the next best thing we can look at is our diet. So the food we eat has a big impact on the climate as well. One of the biggest things we could do is shift to a plant-based diet and also try to cut down on food waste, which creates methane, and also try to compost whatever waste we create. Additional actions we can take in our life after that, which aren't quite as impactful, but still matter a lot, is certainly buying a lot less stuff. Every time we buy something new, there's carbon embedded in that, from the manufacturing process to the shipping. We should try to buy more used things if possible, particularly clothing, which has a ton of carbon in it and also has tons of toxic chemicals. We can try to engage in more recycling, washing clothes and cold water. There are lots of little things we can do that definitely add up. And when we take these actions, it's not just better for the planet, it's better for our health as well. So when we work to have cleaner energy, we're going to have cleaner air for us all. When we're driving less, we can walk and bike more, and that's good for our health as well. Obviously, eating more vegetables is better for us. Buying less clothes means less toxic chemicals that might enter our bodies from new clothing. And just the less stuff we have, the more fun we can have in life, and the more money we can have for other things. We also really encourage people to not just take action in their personal life, but to use their voice as a consumer, as a resident or citizen of the United States, to take action to move our governments and our corporations. Right now, we're in a good place in the national government where we have a new administration, the Biden administration, that is putting climate change front and center. But we still need to push hard to make sure that people are prioritized. The hardest hit communities in the United States are put first, both in terms of protecting them and making sure jobs go to them. Also, there's a lot of action we can take at the local and state level. A lot of the best climate legislation has come at the local and state level, and that's because people like us have called, met with, written to our local government officials and gotten them to take action on things like clean energy mandates that really make a huge difference. And of course, educate your friends and family when you take action to encourage them to take action as well. In addition to pushing government at all levels, we can encourage corporations to move faster on climate change. And this really works. Corporations have responded to pressure to move to clean energy by rapidly increasing their purchases the world over. Here in the United States, we're seeing massive purchases of solar and wind installations. Wind and solar have grown tremendously in just the last 10 years, to the point where they can now power 32 million homes. And here at Green America, we found that using consumer voices really works with corporate America. Back in 2014, when we looked at Amazon, they weren't using any clean energy. So we got tens of thousands of people to reach out to them. We worked with investors to reach out to them. Ultimately, their own employees put pressure on the company. And now Amazon's going to reach 100% renewable energy by 2025. and they're saying they're going to be net zero carbon by 2040. So this is a big change. There's a lot for them still to do. There's a lot of things they need to answer about how they're going to get to these places and do it in a way that benefits communities around the world. But this has been a sea change at a company that was refusing to do anything just a few years ago. And it's because of the pressure that was put on them by people like you. Green America has also been working to get the telecom sector to move to renewable energy. So we have a campaign called Hang Up on Fossil Fuels. The four major telecom companies weren't using very much renewable energy at all and didn't have plans to expand that. We called on them to move faster. We got consumers across the country to push on them. We got media coverage. We got investors to put pressure on them. And we're seeing a really big change there too. T-Mobile Sprint is the leader. They're going to get to 100% renewable energy. AT&T is moving though as well. They've gotten to about 30% renewable energy. And Verizon has made a commitment to 50% renewable energy by 2025. And that's not enough. They need to get to 100%. So we're going to keep pressure on them. And we're going to make sure that when they create renewable energy projects around the country, those actually benefit communities, benefit workers, and in particular, benefit women and people of color who often are left out of the renewable energy sector. We want to make sure everyone's benefiting. So in closing, I would encourage you to take action, both in your personal life, shift the way you're living and spending to be a little greener, to try and address these carbon emissions. Take actions that interest and excite you, whether it's walking more, moving your home to clean energy, starting a garden in your backyard, growing your own food. These are all things you could start to do right now that are fun and engaging. And then when you do that, also take steps to push companies, join actions that you see from organizations like Green America. Call your representatives to encourage them to act on climate change and support important bills that are coming up. And share what you're doing with your friends and family. Educate them a bit about why they need to be active on climate change. And we encourage you to start small. Pick a few things, one or two things to start with, do them, see the success you're having, and then build from there. You can find lots of tips, suggestions, and ideas for addressing climate change and green living at our website, greenamerica.org. So I encourage you to check that out. Thank you for joining me today, and enjoy the rest of the Health and Fitness Expo.